Time is just gone 9:36 a.m. as we continue, and let's focus on the economy of the country. And we are talking about inflation and the annual consumer price inflation. We've learned pulled back in December, easing to 5.1% from 5.5% in November, and also 5.9% in October. Now, this obviously concludes the results for 2023, where we've seen an average inflation rate for the year at 6%, which is lower than 2022, which was at around 6.9%. And to unpack what these numbers actually mean and how significant are these numbers, we're joined by economist Dominic Brown. Dominic, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Morning. Thank you.
Yes, Dominic, interesting that we've seen these numbers actually creeping up, and we're talking about quite a significant drop from the average in 2022 from 6.9% to 6%.
Yes, it is almost 1% each decline in what's known as headline inflation. But this is um, based on a basket of food that's weighted towards a minority of people in the country. The Peter Maritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group does a survey that estimates what the levels of inflation are for low income households. And when you look at quintiles 1 to 4, which is effectively 80% of the population, uh, the levels of inflation for them is around 8.3% on average, and 9.1% for the poorest quintile, and gradually lower as as their slightly higher income level. So poorer people are in fact feeling the level of inflation even worse, and this of course reduces the level of spending power that people have in society, which means that your income or how much money you have will be able to buy less goods at the end of the day.
Yes. Now, Dominic, managing inflation obviously in the volatile times, and we are still in a volatile times, and also at the same time, there are a combination of a whole host of issues with regard to South Africa, the performance of the economy. There are global issues that are playing out at this point in time. South Africa has been in the news; it's been headline news, obviously, in terms of what has been playing out in the Middle East and the case that South Africa had brought to the ICJ, but economically, looking at South Africa and looking at managing inflation, just your thoughts. How well have we done, or how bad have we done?
So inflation can be driven by different factors. Okay, now in some some people argue that it's too much money chasing too few goods and services, which, given the high levels of demand and supply, they're saying that this is increasing the price levels in society. However, in the current period, I think we can all agree that people don't have sufficient disposable incomes, and that people aren't able to spend enough to, in fact, make ends meet. And so it's not demand side factors that's driving inflation in society. It is primarily issues in terms of supply and blockages in supply, including in terms of the geopolitical tensions that's unfolding globally, not only the genocide on Palestine, but also in terms of the war of Russia against Ukraine, when which there's um, various import export bans on Russia, which is a major export of key agricultural products. So it's primarily on the supply side, and so however, what our South African Reserve Bank has done, along with many other reserve banks around the world, central banks, is they've hiked interest rates in order to try and reduce the amount of money in the economy. But this has really crippled many South Africans, including through higher bond repayments and other debt repayments, further reducing levels of disposable income and, in fact, making a bad situation even worse. The idea behind increasing the interest rate is supposedly to um, try and curb the amount of money in the economy, but in reality, it's to protect the value of the rand and to try and get more so-called financial investors to direct their investments to the rand as opposed to going to the dollar. Um, and this is not an effective, ultimately, what it means is not an effective way of curbing inflation. In reality, it ultimately leads to growing levels of unemployment and impoverishment. So the government has gone with the neoclassical method of dealing with inflation, which in fact, um, as I was saying, makes a bad situation even worse. Alternative measures could be, for example, um, putting caps on the prices of food and limiting the levels of profits, for example, of the four major shopping markets, which accounts for 80% of the market share in the country. And these guys, bad people, not the people working there, but the ones who own them, make huge amounts of profit at the expense of the majority of the population. So we should cap food prices and how much it can increase by. We can
Yes.
also, sorry,
Yes, in fact, I hear what you're saying, Dominic. In fact, and I think sometimes we shouldn't be reading much into some of the numbers that are thrown about statistics. At the end of the day, clearly these are sending mixed signals from what you pointed out. That as this, we speak about lower inflation, and yet you speak about rising food costs, and we've seen this. We've seen these increases right across the entire board. Whether we're talking about food, we're talking about housing, we're talking about electricity, we're talking about transport. These are critical. These are absolutely important. And as you speak about the poorer, or the poorest of the poor, at the end of the day, none of this lower inflation is of any benefit to people that are living below the poverty line, or who are just basically bordering on the poverty line as well.
absolutely, absolutely. No, that's exactly the point. And more than that, uh, when you're hiking interest rates, you are reducing the possibility of investment in the economy because it becomes more expensive to borrow, which also reduces the possibility of being able to invest in new, creating new economies that can also create jobs. So it's really it's a cross-cutting implication. And another potential measure could be to improve the value of the grant in real terms, because we've seen an erosion of basic income grants, which is going to mostly the impoverished people in the country. Uh, and one example is the 350 social relief of distress grant. And when you calculate what the value of that grant is today in terms of what it can actually buy, it's worth around 250 rand as opposed to 350. And so it's important that, given rising prices, that this is accounted for, and these should be paid for through increased taxation on the very wealthy people in the country. And uh, I'm certain your listeners may be aware of this, but there is 350,000 very well-off people in this country with high levels of wealth. This is um, 10%, 1% of the population, and they have the equivalent. If you if you do a small tax on their wealth of between 3 and 7%, you can raise about 140 to 160 billion rand each year, and this would continue. In fact, what I should say is this could continue, given that at this level of a net wealth tax, it wouldn't reduce the wealth stock of the wealthy. So it's not even a redistribution of wealth; it's effectively taking away the income or the growth of the wealthy. So
Well,
there's lots
Dominic,
of possibilities.
yes, just finally, just taking a look ahead at 2024, and now that we see these numbers coming through, how difficult is this year going to be? Are we going to see a lot more? We are going to be in an election year as well, so I know there's a lot of focus that's going to be on the economy, the performance of the economy as well, and in this election year as well. Just taking a look at outlook at this point in time, what sort of interventions are necessary at this point in time?
We have to rethink that economic policy is not only implemented, developed in the country. And the assumptions behind all the political parties' uh, economic policies that they would like to implement, and to scrutinize them and ask them key questions. Why are they arguing that South Africa doesn't have money when there's lots of money in the hands of the rich? Should we not redistribute that wealth so that we can contribute to dealing with unemployment and inequality as part of, and or rather through, improved services and investment into services like public healthcare, public education, public transport, and so on and so forth. And if we can, that will take a lot of challenging of all the current political parties, as unfortunately all of them, spite of the different t-shirts they wear, underlying it, their policies are very much similar in terms of how to run the economy, uh, which therefore uh, begs the question of what the real alternative or where a real alternative can come from.
Yes, Dominic, thank you very much for that, and also for taking time out this morning with us right here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best, and looking forward to future engagements. But for now, please take care.
Thank you so much.
Dominic Brown was our economist against the numbers that have come out lowest inflation in months, average of 6% in 2023 against 6.9% in 2022. Next up, we've got Deshni Subramani joining us. We're talking a Virgil in solidarity with the journalists of Gaza.